We're in Matthew chapter 20, verses 29 through 34. All right, just making sure I have the same information in both places. Oh, man. We have been looking at the place of the disciple in the kingdom of heaven, and the big idea that has been presented to us by the text over the last several weeks is the disciple is a servant. The disciple is not to seek his own greatness or her own greatness in the kingdom of heaven. Those who are the greatest in the kingdom of heaven are servants, the least of these, childlike, people with childlike faith. The first will be last, and the last will be first. It's been a consistent theme through this section of Matthew's gospel. And today we close out this section and transition into the next. And the next section is Holy Week, from chapters 21 through 27. And so next week we'll be starting Holy Week, and Holy Week will take us a year to get through. No, there's no telling how long it'll take us. But tonight, Matthew chapter 20, verses 29 through 34. Somebody please read this for us. Verses 29 and 30. Let's talk about these blind men. As Jesus and his disciples, were leaving Jericho, a large crowd followed him. And two blind men sitting by the road, hearing that Jesus was passing by, cried out, "Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David." We kind of talked about why a crowd would be following Jesus. People in this crowd probably have different reasons for following Jesus, but they're following after Jesus.
Doesn't say that some of them are the disciples, does it?
No, the disciples are with Jesus, though, because it says, and they were leaving.
Okay.
So this is Jesus and his disciples, and a large crowd followed Jesus. Yeah. And then two blind men, they're not part of this crowd. What are they doing?
They sit and chill on the side of the road.
Like a homeless person.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah,
That's why I said
sitting by the road.
Okay.
Why would a blind person sit by the road, and where would a blind person sit by the road? I mean, this isn't somewhere in the middle of nowhere, like between Jericho and Jerusalem. This is people like these blind men. They would sit in the marketplace,
right,
and ask for handouts. Yeah, ask for money that they could live on, or by the city gates, where people would be passing by, where there would be a lot of traffic. So by the city gates. Jesus is headed out of town. He's leaving Jericho, so they're most likely by the city gates. These guys are not part of the crowd, but this large crowd following Jesus, apparently they're loud enough that these blind guys can tell, oh, this is Jesus. And these blind beggars, they cry out, and what do they say? They say, Lord. Lord. They don't say, oh, celebrity Jesus. They say, Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David. What strikes you about their words? They refer to Jesus as the rightful heir to David's throne, the King of Israel. Like, that's who they're talking to. They recognize Jesus as such. Verses 31 and 32. The crowd sternly told them to be quiet. Shut up, you nuisance. But they cried out all the more, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us. Why would the crowd sternly tell them to be quiet? Jesus is too busy for you.
Yeah.
What is Jesus on his way to? He's leaving Jericho and he's going to Jerusalem. And what's gonna happen in Jerusalem? This is our introduction to Holy Week. Like, this passage is our introduction to Holy Week, our transition into Holy Week. What's going to happen in Jerusalem? We see this in verses 17 through 19. He's going to be crucified, and he's going to die, and he's going to be raised from the dead. What is going to be accomplished in Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection?
Salvation of the world.
Salvation. He is saving the world through his atoning sacrifice on the cross.
That's what he's getting ready to do.
And he's providing atonement for his chosen people. This is the cup that he's drinking from. That's what he's on his way to do. In nearly a week from this point, we're reading about right here, nearly a week, longer than a week, because it takes him a little time to get to Jerusalem, right? But in nearly a week, he's going to be giving his life on a cross. And in chapters 21 through 27, we see everything that Christ has to do before his crucifixion. That's a lot of stuff that Jesus still has to do. Mm-hmm. And nearly only a week to do that. Jesus, this is crunch time for him.
There you go.
It's crunch time for Jesus. And this is what he's on his way to do. And this is important work. And you think somewhere in the back of the minds of people in the crowd, they're thinking, because Jesus has just taught, I'm about to go die. Like this is the important work I came to do. I am about the Father's business. I am about his will and not my own. You think something about these crowds are like, Jesus, that's so small. Jesus doesn't need to deal with that. He's on his way to die for the sins of the whole world. And even though Jesus is on his way to do this, like, this is the most important work that'll ever be done in the history of everything. In the history of history. Yeah. And Jesus stopped.
To say, what can I do for you?
Yeah. So what would you like me to do for you? He stopped his work to say, what would you like me to do for you?
That's big.
How does that make any sense? So
No,
Jesus he's on his way to Jerusalem to do this all important work, right?
Yeah, right.
And he stops, and he asks these blind beggars, "What do you want me to do for you?" And there are a couple things we learn about Jesus. The first is that Jesus did not live a convenient life, right?
Oh, well, that's poignant.
Jesus didn't live a convenient life. The second is he lived a compassionate life. Right. Jesus was always going out of his way to serve people and to heal people and to share the gospel with people and to call people to salvation. He was always going out of his way for others. Like, he could have come to earth. He could have lived a perfect life and then just gone straight to the cross, right? Mm-hmm. But he chose to give his life to other people and to be interruptible and to not just have tunnel vision toward the cross. He was interruptible and he lived an inconvenient life. If we are to be like Jesus, what does that mean about the kind of life that we live as Christians, as followers of Christ? This crowd obviously wasn't really following Jesus. They were physically with Jesus as Jesus was walking. But they couldn't be interrupted. And they didn't want their Lord to be interrupted with this stuff.
True.
But Jesus stopped the whole crowd. And I'm sure he had to part the crowd, right? And he called out and he said, What do you want me to do for you? This was unconditional. Jesus didn't say, hey, if you donate some money to my ministry, maybe we can perform a healing. Jesus didn't do that. Jesus didn't require their finances or their attendance. He didn't say, hey, if you stand up and if you come with me, I promise I'll restore your sight. No, he just said, hey, what would you like me to do for you? That was it. That's what Jesus said. This was unconditional. It was inconvenient, and it was just based on compassion. If we are living like Jesus, then we live lives of inconvenience. Look, the Christian life is not a convenient life to live.
Understatement.
Right? That is an understatement. Yeah, it's not a convenient life. We, as Christians, we don't just tunnel vision. Okay, that's what I'm doing. We are interruptible like Jesus is interruptible. Jeannie, you said that you think about homeless people today when you read this passage, and I do too. I think about people who have the cardboard box signs, and who most people pass by and say, oh, those nuisances, or you pull up in the car, and there they are, and you position the car, you position the car just right so you don't have to look at them. There's a thing right there, and you're like, hope they don't come to the car, and then the light turns green. And I was walking here today, and there was a person driving in a car, they came out of their house, and I was waving, and they were And I was like waving, and they were like doing their best to hide their face so they didn't have to look. And then they got in their car and they had to drive past me too. And so I like waved as they were driving by, and they're just like, that's the way the world is. That's the way people are. Yeah, it's important. When was the last time any of us rolled by that type of person, right? And we, instead of being worried about holding up traffic or somebody stealing our money or whatever, like taking advantage of it, when's the last time we didn't just hand somebody money, but actually talk to somebody? When's the last, that's what Jesus did. He didn't just say, okay, here's your handout. He addressed these men. He talked to them. He wasn't just doing handouts. He wasn't just doing like street healings or whatever, and then, oh, God bless you, and on his way. No, he talked to these men. When's the last time we did that? That is more fruitful than just passing somebody money through a car window. I remember I lived in Oklahoma City, and there was somebody next to I-240, Oklahoma City, on the south side of Oklahoma City, just north of Moore. And there was a McDonald's right there, and I said, hey, what if you meet me at that McDonald's and we'll sit together and eat and have a conversation? And I'll tell you, more fruit came from a conversation like that than just handing somebody a couple dollars. Like, really investing in people it is so inconvenient.
That's why Jesus was so good at it.
But that's what Christ calls us to.
Yeah.
Verses 33 and 34.
Okay.
They said to him, we need $100.
No, they did not.
To start our own ministry.
No, they did not.
They said to him, Lord, we want our eyes opened. These blind men wanted to see, and they heard that King Jesus could do that. So they asked him. Mm-hmm. There's no shame here. They're just like, hey, we would really like to see. Moved with compassion, Jesus touched their eyes, and immediately they regained their sight and followed him. Again, Jesus didn't ask for their money. Jesus didn't ask for their attendance. He
didn't ask for them to follow.
He didn't ask for anything. He did what he did unconditionally, which is what we should be like, right? But when we do things unconditionally for others, helping in a sincere way, not a begrudgingly or expecting something in return, but helping in a sincere way.
Yeah.
If as a church we do that,
We're
supposed to.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons we just started our Deacons Benevolence Fund, right? So that there's a fund for that.
Yeah.
So that deacons at their discretion now can say, "Hey, let's help," and it can just get done. That's what we need to be like, unconditionally. Even when it's inconvenient for us, we live interruptible lives. That's just what it means to have hospitality, right? We live interruptible lives. All of our time is given to others, even on the Sabbath. You remember what Jesus did on the Sabbath? He healed people on the Sabbath, on his day of rest.
Yeah, he was
healed
so
people,
bad for doing
right?
that.
Oh yeah, and they
people were angry about that. And what did Jesus teach? What did Jesus teach? The Sabbath is for man, not man for the Sabbath.
Mm-hmm.
All of Jesus' time. Do we realize all of our time belongs to Jesus and not us?
All of our money too.
All of our money too. Everything that we have, it belongs to Jesus, not us. Yet we have so many people who, I need my personal time. We don't have personal time. It belongs to Jesus. It's his personal time.
Yeah.
People using, or people make excuses for not showing up to the gathering on Sunday. This is my only day off. It's not your time.
We're here for church.
But it's also like, oh, I have a place to be, and if I stop, then I won't make it on time. yet, even Jesus, when he's going to Jerusalem, to the cross, he only has a week left to do everything that he needs to do on this earth. And he makes the time for people, to serve people. That's the kind of life we are to live. And that's what God wants us to do with what we think is our time. Right? He wants us to give it all away to others. He wants us to give ourselves away to others. The greatest in the kingdom of heaven is your servant, your slave to others. Yeah, I think Jesus is getting at the same thing here. He didn't only teach it, now he's setting the example. And this is the passage that introduces us to Holy Week and eventually ends in Jesus not only giving his time, but his life, his blood.